Hello everyone, I'm Drachona. I just had a real quick thought. I promise it's quick. I came out in the cold just to make sure that I wouldn't talk too much. I wanted to make a very important distinction that we should all understand, but it seems like a lot of people don't, because I've seen multiple videos that people have made, even people that I agree with, where they do not make the distinction between riots and protests.
You voted Trump! You voted Trump!
Oh, we
Yeah! Yeah, he voted Trump!
She been staying
Yeah!
Oh, yeah. Oh, y'all vote. Oh, y'all do that to yeah. Damn.
Beat his ass!
Don't vote Trump.
Don't vote Trump! Don't vote Trump!
Yeah, this shit didn't it. Still in spot.
Hey, y'all be going though.
Hey, take the lighter shot.
So let's start simple. Let's look at the definitions. A protest is a statement or action expressing disapproval of or objection to something. There's nothing about it that is inherently violent. Protest is just you don't like something, you do something about it. Usually a written statement or a march, something like that, but there's nothing about it that is inherently violent. Protests are generally defined by a lack of violence. A riot, on the other hand, is defined as a violent disturbance of the peace by a crowd. Now this is what distinguishes a riot from a protest. Violence. Physical violence. People beating other people up, setting things on fire, destroying property. Now these recent protests and riots are obviously in response to the same thing. The election of Donald Trump. And obviously what he stands for. I do not disagree with the people who are protesting. I myself am not doing it because I don't feel that it's necessary. I think that protests are important, but that there are only certain occasions where it really makes sense. In the past, there were situations like fighting for civil rights, fighting for women's rights, and I mean in the past, before I was even born, where protesting was necessary, where that statement needed to be made. In this situation, I don't feel that this statement needs to be made. Not yet. Once he actually becomes president, because let's keep in mind, he's not president yet. President Obama is still the sitting president until January. Once he becomes president, if he does anything that we don't like, if he does something that divides us, then we can do something about that. And that's when protesting may be necessary. Right now, it's not necessary. It comes across more as childish. Like, we just don't like what happened, so we're going to complain about it. But again, I'm not against the people who are peacefully protesting. In my opinion, protesting is defined by peace. Rioting is defined by violence. We have to make this important distinction because when we talk about the protests, we can only talk about the people who are marching, who are holding up signs, who are doing nothing violent. If we want to talk about the people who are beating random people up, who are setting things on fire, who are destroying property, all these videos that I'm sure a lot of people have been watching, that is rioting, not protesting. You could say it's a form of protest, but it is a riot by any definition. It is violence, not peace. I just feel like that needed to be said. I haven't heard a whole lot of people talking about this, making this distinction. Again, I don't necessarily agree with or relate to the people who are protesting, but in my opinion, there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with peaceful protests. However, there is no justification for violent riots. There is no justification for the things that we've seen in these past few days. And we need to understand that protesting is not the same as rioting. And that these protesters who are not causing any kind of violence, they get a pass. At least for right now. I'm not saying that what they're doing is completely justified, but at least it's peaceful. But the people on the other side, who are beating people up, setting things on fire, destroying property, they are criminals. There's no discussion to be had. They are criminals. And there's no justification for that. Sometimes violence is necessary, but this is not a situation where it's necessary. So yeah, just keep in mind that protests are not the same as riots. And it's really easy to tell the difference between the two, because one can easily turn into another. When people are marching, holding up signs, chanting, that's one thing. The moment they start saying things that are inflammatory, the moment they start attacking people, especially, destroying property, any kind of violent or destructive acts, that's when it becomes a riot. And that's when it becomes wholly different. And I just want to repeat a point that I made in my other video. Those who call the storm will get it. If you're the kind of person who's out there rioting, you're the violent ones. Right now, Trump has not done anything. You're the ones who are causing problems. This is your fault. Not the fault of the people who voted for Trump. And it's not Trump's fault. You're the ones who are causing violence. If a revolution starts, it will be your fault, not anyone else's. Anyway, this should be the last video that I make about all this. If you're familiar at all with my channel, you know that I don't make videos about news or politics. I just felt like these conversations about the election, about the Electoral College, and about riots versus protests needed to be had. So, yeah, this should be the last that I have to say. Hopefully this all calms down and people will actually start thinking straight. In the meantime, I'm Drachona, and have a nice day.